Welcome back to the Masters of Materium. My name is Virtual, and we're continuing to review Aaelim's amazing work at recreating some of the deeds in a game called Valheim.
Start off with the title slide here, the Village of the Earl. And then here we have the plot map. Aaelim, take it away.
Yeah, so on the left side as previous, we have the RPG Maker plot map, and on the right side we have an aerial view from Valheim of the Village of the Earl. And the Village of the Earl, first off, is most of the deeds are kind of square shaped. This one here is, as you can see, is quite elongated and rectangular. Pretty good entry from either side with a bit of extra protection around the deed holder's home, which I really like the deed holder's home in this one. Quite a bit of space, very easy access, and all your major buildings are on the main throughway from the main entrance to the deed holder's home, and a bit of farming and ranching in the back here as well. As with the Village of the Viscount, you also have a large building here, and I'm sure most people are looking at that and saying, large barn, well, what's the relevance of a large barn? Well, the main thing on most of these deeds is I wanted to try to showcase as many different large, grand buildings and such as possible. And I didn't actually have a large barn made on any of the deeds, so that's one of the main reasons a large barn was here. The other possibility, I guess it could be actually viable potentially if you had some ranching hamlets nearby, because none of the ranching hamlets actually have a large building plot either. Other than that, it's a pretty well all-rounded setup here. Would be, I would say, fairly viable for most people's needs. Nothing particularly specialized, though.
Yeah, I really like how the main alleyway here has got the 10 by 10s, and they put the 5 by 5s on the outside on this deed.
Something I'm really curious about is how dangerous the goblins and all the creatures are going to be in terms of our deeds. It's been pretty much confirmed that they might attack the towns or villages sometimes. So, Aaelim, do you think that's going to be an ongoing threat that we're going to have to really worry about, or not really?
So, based on what Michael McCarthy said in very early videos, is that there's different layers of walls, right? So the higher the tier deed, the higher tier walls, and should keep out most of the the weaker monsters at least, and you can upgrade the walls. So I think initially on, before people have upgraded walls and such, that's going to become more of an issue. They also mentioned that the actual buildings themselves wouldn't be destroyed, but the goblins attack, they could probably kill off your livestock, maybe destroy some crops, obviously potentially kill people walking around in the village or AFK or whatever as well. So I do think it'll be an issue for sure. How much of an issue, time will have to tell there.
I wonder if they can kill horses that are attached to a hitching post.
Yeah, I suppose it's possible. I would hope that the hitching post horses would be kind of considered a safe zone, but we'll have to find that one out.
I wonder if they could damage buildings to the point where they render them unusable until they're fixed. There's another possibility for that as well. You see here, this is the kind of the base, the foundation for the entire village. See all the little 5 by 5s, where the house goes, the large on the right there. This is a shot from the front entrance of the Earl. In the background, you see the house, and here's all the 10 by 10 shops down the main alleyway here. A couple more shots of the 10 by 10s. Shot of the large barns. You look in there, you can see all the pens on the left and right, and then there's a second floor where there's some more. And now we have the house.
Yeah, so this house was somewhat a complicated build. There's a lot of designs in here, and multiple different levels and layers and entrances and exits and roofing designs, and when it comes to the various sets of chimneys and stuff. So this was actually one of the harder of the houses, despite not being particularly large. I also do very much like the look of this house, and honestly the whole Village of the Earl is quite a pretty deed, and the location also on this deed, I have being on the peninsula with water surrounding, is quite nice as well. And I think the reconstruction image is fairly accurate to the original NFT picture, which is on the right there.
I love that art on the bottom there. It's great.
Yeah, no, that's I would say that's pretty spot on. So there's a couple more shots here. I think I have some from the ground level here. This is the back. You can see there's a couple more entrances that we added. Kind of peeking through the front door. This is inside the main floor of the house, kind of looking across. This is up next to the bed. That's looking down. That's the front entrance on the left there with the door open and kind of the Earl's throne, I guess we'll call it. I think I took a picture of that. Yeah. So there's an up close picture of that.
He's hungry, that guy.
It's all that food from the large barn. This is the basement entrance. I was trying to take a better shot of this, but it wasn't too many angles. But
That's where you go if you've been naughty.
Okay, I think that's the last slide. Yeah. So you want to get to the video? Anything else you want to discuss?
We just take a quick look at the building options. I don't have anything dramatically different than Aaelim, but one thing we've talked a lot about internally is using the 5x5s for simple storage, because I don't think there's going to be anything special with the larger sizes. So we might as well just use the 5x5s to store things in general. Aaelim, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, stacking those simple storehouses on the 5x5s for sure is viable. The 10x10s will store more stuff, but it's question: do you want to actually waste one of your higher tier building plots on just storage? It does seem like kind of a waste for sure.
And we will be creating a building tier video, so make sure you stay tuned for that, where we pretty much rank every building in Mirandus. I think we're ready for the video, Aaelim.
All right, let's have some adventure here. In the background, you'll see the Archduke. He'll be coming up in a few weeks.
So one thing we can talk about as we're watching the clan here walk away is with the upcoming playtest is confirm that you're going to have to go to citadels to charge yourself up, which is a game mechanic that obviously is part of Valheim as well, where you go into your building and get recharged. Aaelim, do you think that the main game is going to be like that as well, where you have to go back to your home and recharge?
So based on what I'm hearing now and what I'm hearing kind of up for this upcoming playtest, I am kind of leaning towards that being the case, which is a little different than the previous playtests where energy kind of recharged, relatively quickly, constantly. But also in those previous playtests, you didn't have things like food buff and resting wasn't actually required despite it, existing. So that would certainly, make sense. And based on what something Grill was actually mentioning earlier, where they potentially would have a stamina bar as something that depletes over time, and when it depletes, you have to pretty much go back and recharge it all in one shot instead of a general or a gradual regeneration. Would make things such as food and your health doing the same thing, make things such as rest much more important than it would be in the previous playtests.
Another playtest tip that we've been chatting about a lot internally is the value of archery. It sounds like it's going to be incredibly difficult, dangerous. Everything from deer and buck and goblins all be deadly in this upcoming playtest. And if you die, you have to restart. So one of the things we've been chatting a lot about is using archery in general to try to stay out of range from melee attacks. What's your opinion on that, Grill?
No, I think it's going to be, especially somebody who doesn't own a matching box currently, I think it's going to be pretty much the only way I adventure.
We'll take care of that for you, Grill.
Yeah.
You're not playing without a matching box. Simple as that.
Yeah, either a Vox or an exemplar. But you see here, we're sticking to a group, trying to stay safe out here in the wilds. Creatures, unfortunately, are not that dangerous as we're like way above the area we're running through in terms of gear. But you can see we're doing some wood chopping, some hunting, sticking together. I think all that's going to be important to do on the playtest.
Yeah, I can see that in the final game too. Let's say you're searching for some rare herb or some specific rare tree that you can't access easy as a green cloak, or maybe alchemists if they're foraging or whatever. You might have to be going into actual groups to acquire those materials. So something this kind of like a hunting party could easily have some crafters mixed in with it as well to fully utilize all its potential.
Yeah, I think it's going to be true for a lot of things, from mining to map making to et cetera, where you're going to have a group. You know, the odds of survival, I think, are going to be very low if you're going to try to be a solo player. So make sure you join the masters at Materium.com. Come to our Discord, hop on in.
Now, coming up here, you see on the right, there's a runestone, and Michael McCarthy says, you know, that Mirandus is going to have a deep amount of lore to the game. So, will you see things like runestones or, you know, other kind of, you know, hidden things and puzzles to unlock information? I could certainly see that. Certainly a possibility. Oh, this part here is really good. You see Morrow here aiming back, gets the long long slow-mo headshot.
Quite the shot. That is a good shot. You can see the creature dies all the way out there in the distance.
Exactly. So that's a call out to you, Morrow, if you're watching.
There's another runestone coming up here.
I personally just love the fact that we're just going to be dropped in the world and essentially know almost nothing about the lore, and everything's just going to have to be discovered. So.
Totally. That's like the most exciting thing.
Mm-hmm.
Figure everything out for ourselves.
So that's the path that was just clicked through there that we took from the town of the Archduke to here. And that's a bit of kind of raspberries and stuff that you can take to gather for food to eat directly. Kind of the equivalent of travel rations in Mirandus, or you can, you know, bake them into various ingredients. And kind of an interesting thing here, you see that deer just kind of spontaneously combusts. My thought is Virtual probably attacked it, and there is some lag on this server, but that's yet to be seen.
Look at his position versus the deer right now. It's like across the road.
So one of the things that's interesting about Valheim is you have to eat 3 types of food to like max out your energy and your resources. Do you think it's going to be like that in Mirandus, Aaelim?
So it's possible that eating a specific food gives you a, you know, specific kind of buff. Food in general mostly give you, you know, stamina regeneration. So any food should do that. But let's say you want a, you know, a speed buff and maybe a health buff and maybe a total energy buff or something. You might have to potentially eat, you know, multiple different foods to stack all that. We'll have to find that out. That hasn't really been discussed to the best of my knowledge.
I'm hoping you have to eat like, you know, 100 different things. That would be perfect as far as I'm concerned.
So what you see here is the Village of the Earl's billboard with all the stats of the village, and you know, if you're interested in looking at that, you can read through that there. Or this here is a overhead view of the Village of the Earl, so you can kind of see what the scale of everything is, and you have a little dock there we just went over. You can see the Village of the Earl's home in the back and the main throughway through the center here. And which starts into the video. So we're running through here. We start first going into the armor shop. And very similar to armor shops that we've seen before, this particular armor shop holds, you know, all the usual things, multiple different sets of armor, holding some shields. You have a grill there, which is our, you know, general salesperson of all shops. He seems to be pretty much in every armor shop. And
I seem to be in every armor shop in the game.
Exactly.
Standard NPC.
There you go. Are you going to try to sell me something this time? The last time you tried to sell me stuff, I banged the desk and stormed out. So.
Yeah, I know. That's it. Well, I'm giving you one more chance.
It looks like I'm thinking about it, but no, I guess not.
I think I need a new profession here.
And we have a weapon shop, and this weapon shop has a pretty wide selection of stuff. You have hammers, you have magical items, you have swords, you have spears, you have a little bit of everything, and decently higher tier. So with all these weapon shops and armor shops, as I mentioned in a previous video, each, not just the size of the shop, but also where the shop is located, tends to have higher tier items available. And I can see that actually happening in Mirandus to some extent. Like, let's say you have a 10 by 10 armor shop on an outpost. You wouldn't expect that 10 by 10 armor shop to have quite as high tier armors as, say, a 10 by 10 armor shop in a, Town of the Archduke, per se. simply because there probably won't be, the number of people required looking for a specialty item in that particular location. So I tried to keep that general trend with, all these buildings as well.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's one of my biggest questions is, will a small weapon stand, for an example, be able to sell a top tier weapon? Obviously, they're going to have limited number of cases and space, but perhaps they'll be able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see how the players organize their weapon shops and armor shops. Because as you mentioned, if it's a lower tier deed, maybe you want lower price weapons and try to go for volume instead of high price items. So
even beyond that, let's say you're looking, or you're in the market to buy a high tier sword. Typically if you're going to buy a high tier sword, you'd probably go to a city expecting to find it. You probably wouldn't go to some random homestead out in the wilderness with their 5x5 weapon stand, right? And expect that they have that. You might, but most people probably wouldn't be looking there as the first option.
we know that the display cases are going to be upgradable. Do you think that those upgrades are going to determine the tier of the items that can be sold?
Tier of the items, I don't know. Certainly they mentioned like magical items would be in, specialty display cases. Potentially, higher tier items would have even more higher tier display cases as well, potentially, but I'm not sure if a high tier, like a non-magical item, would require the specialty display cases.
Yeah, I upgraded. I think I failed enough at being an armor shopkeeper, so I'm trying my trying out the outfitter here.
Jack of all trades grill, I'm gonna have to call you.
That's
right. So you see the outfitter, it's selling various tapestries, banners used for heraldry of your deeds. We got some armor sets for selling some, cloth-based armor, and of course you can craft linen and other kinds of, cloth materials there as well. So
I actually see a little linen on the ground there on the right, underneath the purple banner.
Yeah, that spinning wheel's just been, cranking that stuff out.
One thing that you guys clued me onto is how critical the outfitter is going to be. You guys think it's going to be one of the top buildings in general, right?
At least.
Yeah, I've yet to see an MMO where cloth wasn't like one of the most important things in the entire game in terms of crafting and advancing your characters.
And for people that are wondering why there's so few of them so far, they haven't gone for sale. They've only been dropped to some of the founders' notes.
In the playtest number 3, there was a simple tannery. In that one, you could, in quotes, potentially craft a like a wolf hide jerkin. But the problem with that particular playtest is that they didn't get the spawn correct for the wolf, or some issues with the animation or something. So the wolf never actually existed, and that item that you could craft remained forever elusive.
The wolf is a lie.
The wolf is a lie, exactly.
Which brings up an interesting point. I mean, killing deer and buck, for an example, you're going to have meat, hopefully Materium, and you're going to have leather, right? So it's going to be, do you think you have leather from deer? Buck?
Yeah, I would expect so. And potentially horns and stuff as well, right? Mm-hmm. And they also gave, in the previous playtest, they gave sinews. So quite a few potential things that you could get from deer, maybe even some other things.
Yeah, it all depends on how deep they want to go with the actual materials involved in crafting.
And fun fact, in real life, you can buy deer antler, which increases different types of growth hormones or growth factors. So,
and this is the first jeweler that has a specific enchanting station, which is one of the major purposes of a jeweler. So on the left-hand side, you can see some various jewels and such. And these particular jewels actually function very similar to how the Lantern of the Sun look in Mirandus. They kind of look like a flashlight. It's almost actually identical to the illumination of the Lantern of the Sun. And, various tools for actually crafting rings, necklaces, and then we have the enchanting. And the enchanting, for sure, you can do weapons, what they mentioned. Whether or not you can, enchant other pieces of gear, like, gemming, armor pieces and such, have yet to be seen. What do you guys think about that?
Enchant everything.
Enchant it all?
Yeah. I mean, in WoW, you can enchant. They
Almost
limited
everything.
Almost everything. Yeah, it used to be everything at one point, right? Then they limited it a bit more. They also started
Yeah.
making like leatherworking kits and a couple other things, but initially it was like enchants for every single piece.
So
Yeah, I think it's critical. I've given the team a lot of feedback that every economy needs to be as deep and wide as possible. That's going to really make it a lot healthier. You can have people that can just start the game and buy the lowest tier weapons, and then if you start having really high tier enchantments, you're going to have other players spending their Materium on getting top tier weapons. So yeah, I think it's critical they do that.
Yeah, I'd love to see as much specialization as possible. And like you said, a wide array of things that we can do with the materials we farm.
So again, you're going to see forges used kind of for many different supply chains, and I expect them to be pretty ubiquitous amongst most deeds.
I think they're going to be nonstop, the forges on almost every single one in the game.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you could, handle even a second forge in many deeds, because they're probably going to be running pretty much 24/7.
One thing that was mentioned on Discord was, having very limited amount of ore and these different metals and having to smelt the weapons. This would obviously be deeper into the Mirandus game, but I think that'll be interesting. Do you think they're going to do that, Aaelim, where you have to resmelt weapons?
Resmelting, potentially reforging, recovering materials from previous weapons. I'd hope they do kind of all of those things. It makes it so, previous weapons and items aren't useless. And it also makes it so you have the kind of that recycling effect adds more to the economy as well. So I would hope that happens for sure.
Yeah, and especially if you get an abundance of, let's say bronze swords, and you can smelt it and then build something more valuable. I think that would also help the economy quite a bit.
Some games you see things like where you can also use that to upgrade. Like you could mix, say, 2 bronze swords together and have a chance of producing, say, a bronze sword +2 or bronze sword +3, that kind of thing as well. So
like Aeon.
yeah, like Aeon.
Yeah. So
what we have here, the Stonecraft shop. So Stonecraft, like the Tannery and Outfitter, is something that hasn't been sold yet on the other deeds. Again, quite an important building. There's no 5x5 equivalent of it either, so you'll only see these on some of the larger deeds. But it will be quite valuable for making various tools, upgrading walls, potentially making roadways, that sort of thing. So again, a very useful building. Not a building that we have a lot of information on as of yet, which I guess applies to many of the buildings, but this one a little less so.
Do you think you're going to have to build roadways?
I do think you'll be able to build some roadways, at least around like town and stuff, potentially upgrading a little bit. Michael McCarthy did mention that eventually what they would like to do is roadways to kind of build themselves to some extent, or at least pathways as they were traveled more. I'm not sure if they'll ever get to that point, but that's something that's really interesting. If someone walks a path from point A to point B, and then they do that, 1,000 more times, a pathway will start to actually develop in the wilderness. My guess is that's probably not the easiest to do and sync between, all the clients and such, but that would be quite an interesting thing. Also, making roadways that could improve logistics. So, you have a bunch of deeds close to each other. If you can make roadways, would certainly, increase trade potential and stuff. So it's something I'd like to see as well.
oh, only in this tavern.
This is a lonely tavern. It only has one fire lit.
Oh,
Can't be doing very good. They can only afford the fuel for one fire.
I'm too busy trying to sell armor and working at the wood shop, and I ain't got no time to drink.
spinning the spinning wheel at the outfitter.
That's right.
Yeah, look, they got some burritos there. Like some burritos, a bit of chicken. They got a good selection of food, at least.
See, you opened the door and everyone came rushing.
Yeah.
And
It's
for
like
those of you that are not keeping up, we're going to be able to play poker in the taverns pretty soon. So they're going to have a poker game in the taverns. It should be fun.
Is it essentially just poker with a different name? Is that kind of what the
Yeah.
strategy is? Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's 7-card stud, right?
Is that what it's going to be?
Or Hold'em, maybe. It might be Hold'em. Anything's better than the dice game. No offense to the Mirandus team, but
Yeah.
Sixes.
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 Gets a little repetitive to play that.
So obviously they're building all these games. They're going to keep building games for Taverns. Once the real game launches, unless there's reasons to hang around the tavern, like maybe you get a buff that takes 15, 20, 30 minutes. I don't know. I'm just using that as an example. I don't think a lot of players are going to play games, right? I mean, they're going to go in, eat, and get out. So what's your thoughts on that?
And I don't really see myself spending any time in a tavern other than to get, my food buffs and such. So unless they add some other significant potential, I just don't see it viable. While you're sitting in a tavern, you could be out doing things that are, it's actually productive or potentially earning or, doing things that are a little bit more exciting. So I just don't see it having long-term appeal.
It'll be interesting. I mean, it'll be a fun place to go hang out, I guess, but I'd rather hang out in the dangerous woods at night with you guys.
I could see some people doing games at night, but like at the same time, you could be doing something else like crafting or farming or whatever else. It just doesn't seem like in a game where you have to spend Materium to keep your character running. If you're not earning Materium, it seems like you're just moving backwards.
Some smelted product of some sort. It looks like maybe an iron bar or silver bar. No room in inventory. Okay, so it's going to stay there. Was it copper bar?
Back at the tavern. I guess I'm the innkeeper now too, or the
innkeeper,
bartender. And I got that fire lit.
Yeah, there we go.
I'm running this whole town.
So coming into this main area now, we have the area of kind of the center of town. And one of the things that I'm a little disappointed in is that there's not more, shops and stuff that are linked into this area. You kind of expect the center of town kind of be the, the hustle and bustle of the town, but really it's just the entrance to a house and the end of all the actual production and shopping. So that's probably the one downside I can say about this deed, although it does look kind of pretty.
It does look good, but yeah, there's no production near the house, right? Where some of the other deeds, like there's stuff going on all around the house areas.
I know that the homes are going to have keys, like the main building. Do you think anybody can just walk in and hang out, or it's going to be key driven in terms of not in terms of using it, but actually kind of visiting it, you could say?
Let's say New World, which is, kind of around the same time that they were taking inspiration from Mirandus. You could view a copy of someone's home, kind of to scope it out to see if you wanted to, purchase the various, copy. Similar to how Beebs bought his little shack that he spent literally all his money to buy. You could do that, but no one could really just, go into your home to the best of my knowledge. And some other games that I can think of, it's very similar where you could get a copy to look at the home, but you couldn't really go in and, scope out people's homes. With that said, as long as, they can't go in and steal from my treasure chest and stuff, I wouldn't mind people, taking a look at how I got the place decorated and such for sure.
Depending on how they, actually design the homes in game, they could have areas that are meant for everybody. And then, something that's behind a locked door, the bedrooms and upstairs areas, storage areas.
Yeah, I don't want anybody in my hot tub except hot
babe. You gotta have some people. You gotta have the elf babes in the hot tub, right?
According to our videos, there's usually about 9 guys in the hot tubs.
Well, one thing that talking about, kind of common areas like you mentioned, girl, the town of the Archduke, the main floor of it is kind of like a common area, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking of.
Yeah, so you have the main throughway going for the front and it goes through to the back, and you have a little reception area and portal and stuff before you actually go up into the tower where everything happens. So you may actually see stuff like that in some of the deeds. This particular house I don't think is really big enough to have common areas, simply because once you go inside you're kind of right in the center of the house, right, and there's not a whole lot of additional space. It does have a nice little, selection of ranching. You have a grain stand next to the farming potential there, and we have looks like some pigs. And we're going into the large barn. Now, one thing specifically about large barns that it's crossed my mind and I haven't said before, and I hope it's not the case, is that a large barn could essentially be additional ranching plots. And that would potentially account for why there's so many large barns, or so many barns and large barns in general, and would certainly make a better sense of the large barn itself if it had that, given the fact that, none of the properties that have substantial ranching have any large plots. So my personal thought is that the barn will probably, supply ranching plots, maybe, used for breeding for, cattle and pigs and sheep and what have you. But my hope is that it isn't, essentially additional ranching plots, which is kind of what's depicted in this particular image and Valheim recreation.
Another idea is that like the barns are animal storage, and then you take them out during the day and put food on the ranching plots, and they feed there, and then you have to put them back in there for breeding, back into the barn for breeding and such.
I'm assuming most raids would probably happen at nighttime, so it might be like animal storage, as well, to protect from like goblin raids and stuff.
Something that'd be wild is if you could tame deer and things and bring them to the barn and breed them.
That would be ideal, but we know what's going to happen, right? You're just going to buy some ancient deer NFT or something of that nature. We got some chickens up here.
A lot of chickens up here.
Yeah, this is like chicken heaven. We even got a crafting bench. Those chickens, you got to put them to work at the crafting.
Put some barding on them and send them into battle.
Maybe you can use your chicken NFTs from spider tanks to get ancient chickens in Mirandus.
Will they shoot rockets?
They might. They certainly might.
You'll be able to buff them with your Vox chickens that are going to be dropped in Mayhem.
Exactly. You got it all figured out. So simple storehouse, as Virtual mentioned on the slide earlier. You're going to be cranking out these simple storehouses. You're going to need tons of storage without question. Even though the deed homes and the buildings have storage, if you ever play games like this, specifically Valheim, you're always short of storage. It's just inevitable.
We had a whole building devoted to storage in our main game.
Yeah, we had like a grand storehouse equivalent just for storage, plus all our carts and stuff. Actually, talking about carts, it's something we haven't talked about in this. Carts and wagons and such. And that could be used for storage as well. And in addition to, transporting goods. So it's also something that's been seen in a previous image of the Village of the Farmer as well. So it's you could potentially use that for temporary storage.
And again, the same shopkeeper.
And we have Grill, who's cloned himself many times over and is yet the shopkeeper, both the armor stand and the armor shop. And we have a weapon stand, again, some basic, low tier swords, and you can see some tools and stuff in the background with a bit of storage. Nothing particular exciting there. Woodworking stand, very similar to the wood shop, just with, without the large stockpiles of inventory and without, the fancy tools and such. And lower tier workbench and less upgrades.
I'm curious about how they're going to make it so the 5x5s of the same type can exist in the towns and villages without creating competition between them.
There's only so many keys that can be used in the crafting station, right? So if you have more of the same building, that means you can have more total keys, so more total crafting potential.
Plus, there's going to be only so much output every building can do, and if one building can't cover it, then the 5x5s can kind of help fill the gaps.
Let's say, the wood shop's getting a little behind, you have a little extra 5x5 capacity, and you might want to drop down a woodworking stand or two just to kind of catch back up so that everything's running, efficiently and optimally.
Yeah, rotating building is going to be a key part of the strategies in general.
I think I'd wear a mask if I was in there. It's looking a little dusty.
Yeah, no kidding.
There'll be some heavy fuming going on there.
There's three main pathways. So you have the main throughway through town, and then you have these two back aisles that have a bunch of 5x5s. And very similar to previous, you have a simple storehouse on this side as well. It's reasonable to have these spread out a little bit, so you always have access to storage pretty much wherever you are in the town, and that'll just make things run more efficiently. bit of a meat stand and a bread stand next to each other, so you can get that bit of basic crafting. Maybe get some traveling rations to fill up your stamina bar. Maybe potentially some food buffs associated with that as well. And you have the lovely tents. 2 tents, very fancy. Not quite the look of the Sultan style tents that you see in the upcoming Mirandus playtest, but this was designed before that was the case, and you can't actually make cloth walls in this game either.
Well, tents, I think, is going to be another one similar to the simple storage where, why waste 10 by 10s on, a camp when you can just put a tent, assuming that you're getting the same kind of regen, but we'll see.
A camp would potentially be able to service more people, but other than that, yeah, no, I agree. Something like a tent, you can just, pretty much place anywhere. Once you get up to the point of like inns and stuff, then they kind of start taking over for taverns, being able to, give the high tier hot meals and such as well. So that becomes important. But the lower tier, like tents and, even less so to camps, yeah, I can see that being something that you could replace or even stack on 5x5s if needed. Same with the hitching post here. We have hitching posts on both sides of the deeds as well. And, you want to give easy access. Someone comes in with their horse. You don't want the distance from where you park your horse to where you have to go and back longer than the distance if you just didn't take a horse at all, right? So this is, again, just to be efficient and give easy access to everything. Picture it like a car, kind of like a car parking plot, or spot. You want to park close to your event. You don't want to, park across the way or, on the other side of the airport or wherever.
Are we going to have valets in Mirandus for our horses? Is that going to be a job?
Majestic stables, man, for the cost of those NFTs, you better be getting a valet. So obviously, Grill is paying his respects here. That's probably why he's been working so many shops. All those shopkeepers must have died off, and he's paying his respects to them, hoping to potentially resurrect them and take some of the burden off his overworking here.
Every time I change shops, I got to sacrifice the previous version of myself.
So 10 by 10 cemetery in most villages and the like, especially if they're not near other deeds, you're going to probably expect a cemetery. And you also would expect a temple, basic buffs, curse removals, removing hexes, that sort of thing. Kind of general staples of any village or town at this point. You likely won't see a lot of these in kind of the smaller deeds, but once you get up to the size of the Village of the Earl, you kind of expect that you have a little bit of everything at least. And this has, of course, the Valrandus god, which has now been named. Can you tell us that name, Virtual?
El Verdon.
And what does that mean?
It means the great or the big green one.
And we're looking a little more farming plots. Looks like some onion seeds. We have a simple granary to store some grain-based products, and we have some chickens. Probably feed the chickens from the simple granary, and hens are loving me plenty because obviously I'm keeping them very well fed, which is a good sign here. And we have the Village of the Earl's house. And we do have a few earls within the guild as well, so this is something that we'll probably be seeing some of. And we'll go inside. And I kind of like the inside of the Village of the Earl. It's it's a nice little place. You have decent size throne here. Now the insides obviously are going to be a little different, but there's limited space. So this area here I would kind of expect to be kind of an eating area, or potentially, maybe have a bed or something of that general nature. You can see plenty of decorations and a little bit of internal storage and room for other people to eat and stuff here as well. Yeah, and we're having a proper feast by the looks of it too. And, little backup storage, nice little fireplace for, cooking meals. Got a nice fancy bed. Comfort 15, that's pretty close to max comfort. And we have a hot tub. No elf babes, but 3 guys, which
Including
is
one naked guy.
one naked guy. That's probably Beebs, I'm guessing, because it's pretty much always Beebs. And you also got the glass windows all the way around for the the most voyeuristic of people with their hot tubs. And
So some of us are exhibitionists, man. What can we say?
so you'll find a lot of these deeds have hot tubs. It's kind of a recurrent theme in some of these builds. I just kind of like the idea of having a hot tub in the bedroom for whatever reason. And it does provide additional comfort.
Who doesn't like a hot tub in the bedroom? Come on.
And we're coming downstairs, and we have Van illuminating the area even more than the lights with his little headlamp.
Oh, that's the headlamp that we saw in the jeweler shop.
Exactly. So you probably snatched one while you were not, working the jeweler when you're at one of your 20 other shops, Grill.
So this is this could be like that common area that we were talking about, right? With the other, a little bit earlier in the video.
Yeah, people could potentially come in here and interact with the deed in some way, and
there's some storage down here.
Exactly. That's a really good call. I kind of forgot this area was here until I see it now. And as we were mentioning before, you see the light illumination from that headlamp. It's literally like exact same style illumination as the lantern of the sun, even the kind of the same arc coming from that, the curvature and distance and range and stuff as well. And someone's sneaking in, looking through the window. I think it's the same guy that was looking through the window when we were at Van's deed back in the farming hamlet.
We have a stalker, apparently.
Yeah, it seems that way. And there's one additional entrance here, which could be a common area as well. And this one's being used for kind of just some storage as well, with some wood and such. So yeah, this deed here, based on its design, would have a couple potential areas for common entrance. So nice little design. I kind of like the Village of the Earl as well. I didn't care for it all that much prior to building it, but after building it, I got appreciation for some of these deeds that I didn't have quite as much appreciation for before.
Yeah, I think that goes for a lot of deeds, right? Just once you're in them and walking around and see how they look fully laid out.
Yeah, like the Baron, the Earl, maybe a little less so with the Marquis, that sort of thing. All of those ones I certainly feel a lot better for now. And deeds that I felt I really liked before, like the Viscount and, Duke and stuff, given how, compact and cramped they are, despite them being incredibly efficient, I should say, they don't feel quite as good without, all that additional, space and such, and proper decoration, and what you're going to see with some of these other deeds.
The Viscount especially felt pretty cramped.
I mean, even the hamlet, once you're walking around in it, it's mind-blowing, right?
And I like how you can kind of walk underneath this building as well with the archways.
Yeah, I love that.
So yeah, so what I'm seeing here is the sun was literally just setting as we were crossing through this area, and so I slowed down the video a little bit so we could see this. It's a nice little touch, just the sun just setting.
It's good closure to the video.
It was planned, of course, from the start.
Obviously.
And we're heading out here to the docks, and the next location, going from the Village of the Earl, is... Do you guys remember where we went from the Village of the...
Well, I'm not sure. I know next in the series here is the Marquis, but...
Marquis went from the Viscount.
Yeah.
Prince, we went from the Baron. I guess we didn't go anywhere with the Earl. The event just ended.
We sunk the ship and died.
Yeah, probably. Got destroyed or eaten by a kraken, maybe.
Well, I guess that's it. Amazing. Aaelim, as always, make sure you check us out, mastersofmaterium.com, join our Discord, and then join the guild. It's really easy. We're wide open for everyone, and we're excited to have you join us. Thank you.